Hi everybody, this is Frank with Tiny Plastic Spaceman. Here to show you just a real quick video on how to disassemble and reassemble your Badger Sotar 2020 airbrush. Now this is a really fine detail airbrush, very nice to use. Used by illustrators mostly, but a lot of board gamers have started to use it, especially with the deals that you can find on Amazon and whatnot. So in case you're wondering how to take it apart so you can clean it and put it back together, this is the video for you. Okay, so first of all, we're going to take off the protective cap, which protects the front of the airbrush. You can see the needle there. And now you can see I've got a quick disconnect adapter. That's up to you whether you like to use those. I love it because I've got a bunch of airbrushes and I just use one hose. I don't have a million lines going around the workshop, so that is it for me. Now this airbrush comes apart a little bit differently than the Patriot or the Renegade, which I've got here. You can see these disassembled in other videos that I've got. For this one, the first thing you have to do is loosen the needle chuck, that's right there, and then pull out the needle. So that is the main difference, and then you can take off the back end of the airbrush. Everything is finger tight. You shouldn't have to use any pliers or tools of any kind really, unless you have to get to the air valve or the seals that are inside, which you will not be doing. If you do need to do that, you'll be sending it off to one of the Badger distributors or maintenance partners that they've got around the world. So now we've got the back end of the airbrush taken apart. That's the most that we need to do. Now we've got the front. So we've got the nozzle tip, which I'm going to try and take off. There we are. I've actually taken off two. Because these are so closely together, you see there's two rows. I usually take everything off in one go on my other airbrushes, but you can see we've got the nozzle tip there, sort of a torpedo shape, similar to the Extreme Patriot. And then we've got the retainer for the nozzle, and that's very similar, or might be the identical to the Renegade. I'm not really sure. And then we've got the nozzle itself, which is a very tiny piece, and that's why we are doing this. Oop, there's the nozzle. Actually stuck to my finger. It is absolutely tiny. Now in the video for the Renegade, I took apart also the Extreme Patriot, but in this one I'll show you, just for comparison, I'll show you the normal, the standard Patriot. Again, like I said, I usually take these apart as one piece. I don't really find that paint gets in between those two pieces very often. So there's a comparison. The same pieces, but just different models of airbrushes. So there's your nozzle tip. This is for the Sotar, and that's for the Patriot. There's your retainer. You see how big that piece is, biggest piece there is. And then there's the nozzle itself for the Patriot and for the Sotar. It's the same piece for the Renegade, actually. I believe they are the same identical internals. Okay, so just putting this back, that was just the demonstration, just to show you how small these pieces are and why we're doing this disassembly over, this is basically an old t-shirt. You can use a towel or something soft to absorb any dropped pieces. You don't want to do this on a hard work surface like a kitchen table or a countertop or a worktop. Make sure you have something soft laid down. Okay, now that is the most I would take apart an airbrush for general cleaning at the end of a painting session, for example. If I need to take it apart a bit more, like I just have a problem I cannot find the issue with, you can take out the trigger assembly. This is not something that you would normally need to do, and this is just for illustrative purposes, once again. Now if you do get paint inside where the trigger goes, where the air valve sits, one take a little bit better care of your airbrush. And 2, this is something you can do if you need to put it through ultrasonic bath or just soak it in thinners overnight or something like that. So now we've taken out the trigger and the trigger backplate, and we have the airbrush body just on its own. Now, if you're going to soak this in airbrush cellulose thinners, you need to get yourself a 1.5 mil wrench, I believe is the size that is, and take off that plastic piece. Okay, because otherwise you'll mess up all that plastic. Now to reassemble it, we've got this T-shaped piece here. We're going to put the trigger backplate in and let it sit to the side. And then we put the trigger itself in and make sure it's on the airbrush valve, which is spring-loaded. And this here, this is D-shaped. This is there's a D-shaped hole, and then this long hollow piece is also D-shaped. So if you don't put them in and if you don't align them properly when you're putting it back in, you won't be able to pull the trigger back. I've had that happen to me before and completely baffled for a few minutes until I took everything apart and I was like, ah, right, okay. You only do it once though. And now we reinstall this trigger assembly, making sure that you can pull that back. Now while we're reassembling this, you'll notice that there's lots of metal-to-metal contact in the trigger assembly area and the trigger backplate and everything. You can use Badger's Reg Dab needle juice to lubricate everything, especially all those metal-to-metal contact areas. All the different brands have their own version of it, but Badger's is just called Reg Dab needle juice. And now this is assuming we've cleaned everything, of course. So now we put on the nozzle very carefully. And you'll notice that for the retaining ring, we've got one side that's got sort of a deep dish to it, and the other side is quite shallow. That shallow side faces towards the front. So now we're just going to gently put that on, and that holds the nozzle in place. This is another area, all these threads are another area where you can put that needle juice. And now we've got the nozzle tip. And again, that very gently goes on. If you're unsure of, you don't want to cross thread anything, and if you're unsure whether you will or won't, just gently turn the piece counterclockwise or to the left until you feel it click just a bit, and then you can tighten it down. And yes, I am aware that I've got some paint there. That's not a big deal. Okay, so now normally on the other Badger airbrushes, we'd be installing the needle and then the back of the airbrush. But this is the Sotar 2020. So we need to do the back of the airbrush first. And just gently thread that in. And note that the openings are horizontal. So it's, the openings are at the top and the bottom, rather than on the Patriot, it's on the side. So now we thread this through the back end of the body. We push this in. Make sure that this will press down properly before you do that. And if it does hit the back of the trigger, just give a little bit of a press and you can push it all the way in. And now we just gently hold that in place. And remember, we're not forcing it down. We're just pressing it in, and then we tighten up the needle chuck and give it a test, and then connect it to air. Just make sure everything works okay. So I hope you found that helpful. If you have, please give us a like, subscribe down below. If you want to check out other Badger disassembly and reassembly videos, check out the link here, and there'll also be links in the description down below. My name's Frank, and I'm from Tiny Plastic Spaceman. Please check us out at tinyplasticspaceman.com. We're also on Facebook and Instagram, TPS Painting Studio. And that is it, I believe. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.